Well, friendly hellos and welcome to the first Notary Governance call of December 19th. This call is taking place at 0800 Pacific, 1600 UTC. Let's take a look at the agenda together. Three big parts. This should be one of the faster calls unless we have a lot of discussion. But as far as new content goes, kicking off with talking about the recent request on refilling the ledger. While that was a little bit delayed, letting you know what to expect next. We'll check in on bugs. There's been no bug reports received in the last week. Want to make sure that no one has any outstanding issues. If you do, help route you to the best place for support. And then check in on the AC bot. It's been running for around 10 days. Get any feedback you might have seen or answer any questions you may have had in using it. The bulk of the next call will be related to the Allocator application period. Remember, this runs until the 20th. So we'll review the dates, the timelines. We'll check in on how many Allocator applications have been received. We'll talk about the rubric that Galen posted in the chat so you can kind of compare scores and look at what other systems are coming up, as well as check in on office hours to try to make this as easy as possible if you're looking for support or questions, which can be difficult juggling a worldwide organization. So we'll check in on that. And as always, we'll have lots of time at the end of the call for any questions or any issues you may want to see brought up. As always, there's a friendly governance team here to back you up. If you're not sure who to reach out to, you could route through me and I'll do my best to loop in the correct POC. And thanks for coming to this call. I just put in chat the link to the Airtable. If you're here on the call now, it looks like many of you are. There's that sign-in form. This is just a great way in your application to be like, look, I've been to the last 6 months worth of governance to make this program better. And it's a really good way to show your participation, not just for now, but for your involvement in the program. So thank you for filling that out. If you are keen to see anything added to the agendas, I post this every week just as a friendly call out. Any topic, your topic. I'll make these issues in GitHub. Just leave a comment. Hey, Kev, I would love to talk about this portion or that portion, and I'll bake it into the agenda to make sure that it gets talked about. For the governance calls, so we are on the last call of 2023. Wow, the whole year went by so quick. Probably feel the same. But today is the last call of the year, taking place on the 19th. There will be one more call this evening or morning, depending on your time zone. Then that's it. Congratulations. Governance calls for the year are going to wrap. So the next question is, how do we look at governance calls in 2024? So I'll be sending a poll out probably in January, and I intend to do two polls. One poll will be for anyone who's in the community and get their input. And the second poll will be those that were selected as allocators. And the goal of this is to find out what is the best time to kind of come together as a worldwide organization. The way we do it right now is we have two calls. That way we can accommodate most time zones taking place worldwide. But there's a lot of pros and cons. Sometimes conversations happens on one call. It doesn't always get carried forward to the other. Watching a YouTube video is nice, but it doesn't always have the same ring. So we'll check in on like, what is the most conducive day for your schedules? Does the time align well for you to get to these calls and like really be ready for it? Should the frequency be reduced? Rather than meeting every other week, should we meet monthly? And should we have a translator when we do meet? So I'll really be looking forward to your input on this one. Please fill it out. We're just going to do strictly just a Republic democracy on this one. Whatever works best for the allocators, that's what we're going to do to make sure that we get your voice. So look forward to that. Really keen on your input. Pending no changes, this is what it would tentatively look like for 2024 if we stick with the every other week schedule. So I'm posting this, but I want to make sure that there is a high caveat note. This is very tentative. So if we do the poll and a lot of the feedback is to switch to monthly or eliminate the morning call or eliminate the afternoon call, we'll very much change this. But as it stands, this is what a bi-weekly call would look like in 2024. And a check-in here in the States, it is December 19th. Wow, which means in about 5 days, most of us are going to go on the holiday break. So I just want to give you a heads up what happens for the governance team during that time frame. We all will still check Slack. We'll still have emails, just as modern hyper-connected humans do. That's just lives on our phone, and we won't be saying completely goodbye to it. But what responses will come back will only be for outages or urgent or any kind of blockers. So if there is kind of an outage or an urgency, please make sure to say it. I would recommend using the notary channel if you're a notary, or in the Phil Plus channel if you're not a notary. and then just put this is an emergency. Make sure that you tag us, and then I'll help route. But there will be delayed comms from that 24 December to January 2nd. So during that period, only responding to outages and P0s for it. All right. I'll pause and before I go into any program updates, see if you guys have any questions or anything you want to talk about that. All right. That is pretty straightforward. So is this for the most part. All right. Hey, DataCap. This one is constantly a thorn in the side. So thank you for flagging it. Essentially, here's what's going on with DataCap. We got the flag that we were running low. I think it was around last Wednesday, last Tuesday. And essentially, when we got ready to fill it, we were alerted by our SEC IT teams that there was an ongoing issue with the ledger. Essentially, Ledger, the organization, found out that there was a malware component that was active, and when plugged in, it could release the keys. So we were given an all hands stop. Don't connect the Ledger. Let the teams figure out what's going on from the security standpoint. And we just received the all clear on that today. So that means that that ledger can be topped off. We should see that sometime this afternoon once the root key holders are aware and tracking this. I don't know who they are, but once they do, they'll get that in, and then they'll be able to put that up there. So again, thanks for flagging. Really appreciate that. We check it, but I think that when you guys see it and bubble up, it just goes 1 point faster. So thanks for the patience. We were kind of working through this tech issue. Now that Ledger's solved it, should be good to go. And bug reports. Man, October, we were just bombarded with bugs, weren't we? So the teams that were working on this really, really prioritize like answering the bug reports, leaving comments. I checked it last night and again this morning. I haven't seen anything new, but if you filed a bug report or if you have anything that's blocking you from being successful in taking part in the program, always flag it to me or just go right to this bug report and fill out a form. And then this way it goes right on the desks of the issues that are being handled by the contractors. And a check-in on the AC bot. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. It had gone live. It's basing the thresholds, but the point that I'd really want to remind you of is that as this AC bot progresses, those thresholds are going to tighten. So on the first 2 weeks, it was very loose. Like what percentage of CID checker scores would need to be maintained in order to not be flagged by the AC bot. And as you can see, as we move into weeks 3 and 4, that's going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. So for those of you that might have an application outstanding or might be waiting, you may see more AC bot auto triggers on those in the coming weeks. Just want to prepare you for that so you can kind of get ahead. If you know that your CID retrieval is low, you might have time to look at it before the AC bot comes over. This is a friendly reminder, as that AC bot runs, by the time we get into mid-January, it's going to be at those thresholds that were decided in the proposal from Phil and running on all cylinders for you. So if you have any questions, please bring them up. Please look for that support, and we'll be happy to back you up on that. So I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions about holidays, bugs, or the AC bot that's running live for us now. All right. Well, let's talk about allocators then. So this slide is a review. I'm putting this on here just so that it's always talked about and always front of the line. To apply to become an allocator, go to GitHub. The link's here in this slide deck, and you create a new issue. You answer 7 quick questions like who you are, what region, what your use case is, and you turn in that GitHub. And inside of that GitHub is a link to a Google Doc. And when you fill out that Google Doc, that is the majority of the questions that you're going to be filling out. So this is going to be like, what's your use case? How do you do what you do? Very complex, very detailed. So once you put that in, it's submitted through an Airtable form. The governance team receives it. We're going to remove all of your PII, like your names, your emails, all of the contact information, then republish that back into your GitHub application. We're still waiting for one of the scripts to come online to do that. Good thing is we have lots of time before that election period closes, but you'll see that shortly. So allocator periods are still open. Highly recommend that you start that. Even if you don't know what you're going to put in your detailed Google form, just opening it up is a great way to kind of get your name on the board and kind of show that like, hey, I'm getting started on this. And then that way we know we're reaching out for help, who might need it, and where to go to reach out. Last week, Galen published the rubric in Slack. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. Sometimes Slack can be a lot of information. So just bubbling this up so it's right there at the top. What's really nice about the rubric is if you're filling out that application and you get asked a question, you might not know what the left-right parameters are. Should you have 10 copies? Should you have 100 copies? Should you store it in 5 locations, 2 locations? And how will that be looked upon from the rest of the community? The rubric is meant to serve as like a scoring guide. It's not just a definitive model, but it's a way that you could look at it and see if you're in the confines of like what's a low or what's a high value add to your application. So one thing that I've seen a lot of notaries do is once they've done their application in Google, they come back and they look at the rubric with their answers and they say, okay, hey, this might be like a 1 or 2 answer. The thing I'd like to point out is that the scores are totaled. And what I mean by that is like take a category like due diligence. That means that if you have a bunch of 1 answers in due diligence, but a 5, you'll kind of average out for having a total due diligence score. So what's nice about this is you might have some parts of your application which are much more stronger than other parts. This is a great way for you to see that and adjust and kind of make any modifications, or to know that you're going to be ready to maybe get some questions about some of the weaker parts in your plan. So again, the rubric is posted. The link's right here in the slide deck, and it's the comment that Galen left. I think it was last week. So if you want to see that, that's ready to go and live for your review. As far as applications, just a friendly check-in, there have been 13 received so far. So those 13 applications were published to GitHub. As soon as they're published, what I do is I go in there and I receive them like, hey, I'm going to mark it, make sure that that timestamp is on there. Everything has been received, and then that can tie back. So again, the deadline to submit is January 20th. The con to waiting until January 20th is if there's a problem or there's information missing or we're looking for additional context, there won't be time to have that discussion. So it really behooves you to submit earlier. And then that way, if anything is needed, you have a broad window. So there's no last minute scramble, or last option, there's no option to kind of reach back and help you as you go through it. So here's what those timelines look like. Remember, January 20th is the deadline to submit. It's coming up quick. It's going to be a Saturday. That means that we still have, the holiday period coming up where you're not going to have a lot of Filecoin Foundation or PL support or governance teams. So that really leaves the week of January 8th through 12th and January 15th through 19th for a lot of support. So to make sure that you guys got that support before we got into that final 2 weeks, we set up just a form like, hey, if you want office hours. This has been really tricky to coordinate. So thanks for your patience on this. Again, working with people in multiple time zones with multiple questions one at a time really gets convoluted. So we made this Airtable form, and what you were able to do is select a date. Like, hey, these are the dates that I'm free. This is my general time zone. And what I was hoping to do was see if there were blocks. Like, cool, we might be able to reach the Singapore block, everyone together on the 19th and schedule 1 hour and give everyone 30 minutes. So I'm putting that together now. Those of you that filled this form out, I'm going to send you a DM when this call gets out, set up a time that we could reach and connect. It's also really helpful to know generally what your question is. On the project with the Filecoin Allocator application, it's a big application, as you've probably seen. So if you might ask me a question, I might have this depth of knowledge on that versus bringing in someone like KZ, who's on the call now, which has just an ocean of knowledge about that. So what's nice about this form is I can see where your general questions are, kind of get some rundown answers, and maybe loop in someone who's much more eloquent and well-versed to give you support on that. Otherwise, what I'm worried is I might just serve as like a collection point where I'm writing down your questions. If that is, then getting back to you. But the goal is that we have somebody that you can reach out and that you can ask those questions. So office hours, we're going to reach out to those people that filled this out for the Singapore timeline. And then I'm going to put something just standard on the books. I'll put this on the calendar on the 9th. This seemed to be a date that came up again and again. And what's nice about that is that office hours on the 9th will give you 2 whole weeks to take any feedback from that and then go forward. So again, if you're keen to sign up, just go to that form, and then I'll also publish dates for the 9th. And the goal of the office hours is Rather than having to ask a very public question, it's a good way to say like, hey, does this pass the smell test? Or I'm doing something a little bit different. Again, it's your time. Whatever you want to talk about, it's just a way that we could help you be the most successful as possible. So with that, that's all the content, the allocator timelines, the rubric, the ledgers being updated, and as far as the office hours. I'll pause and I'll turn it over to you for anything that might be on your mind. Eric, I see your hand first. Floor is yours, bud.
Hi, Kevin. I'm going to have a question with the Rubik's. If I remember that during the V4 or V3, the rubrics will go through a way is how to calculate the score. So my question is, what are the rules for keep the scores and how much weight for the given to the each item? For example, like the due diligence. So if I got the score like 5, so what is the rate for the due diligence? And how can I calculate the final score I would like to have based on the 5 score for the due diligence item? Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Sorry. That's a great question.
Minus.
Pull up the rubric and let's take a look here. I might be able to answer some of that with you. So some questions, if we're just looking at this, they're basic. Like you gave us the information required or you did not. So if there's information missing, this will be like the application's kicked back. Like we didn't know who you were, we can't score it as we go forward. Now, on applications on the past, you might remember, and maybe Eric, this is what you're talking about. At the very bottom, there was a sum total that would then calculate all of these different handles like past experience, monetization, risk
Yeah.
mitigation. Then you could see like I'm low in risk mitigation, but I'm high in due diligence. So that number
Mm-hmm.
balanced out. Here was a finding that came out of the fourth round is that we had applicants that had very, very strong affiliation, reputation. They had committed to being like SLA level fives, signing all the time. And what that did was because they had increased their commitment to SLA, it increased their overall application where they might have a weak bookkeeping plan. So the result was we had a lot of notaries around the mid-cycle who were just empty suits. They didn't come to meetings, they didn't sign anything, and they had essentially just dropped off. And they were only just waiting for a time where they might need to jump in and sign an application. And that showed us that that cumulative scoring might not be the best representation for it. So I will check with Galen as far as like how he's envisioning the total. But if I'm going to give you like the rough draft, it's that rather than adding these scores all together and then multiplying it by a factorial number to pull out a mean, it would be showing like
Mm-hmm.
this category of monetization, this score comes out to be like a 4. So that 4 won't add up with the other sections to give you a final total. It'll show you where these are in this monetization rank. And then if you have a score that places you like in a 3, then we could say, okay, hey, Eric is rated as a 3. You come back and you say, oh, I have much more detail on my accounting, and you boost it up, and now you're going to be at a 5. Eric, let me follow up with Galen to see exactly what that math is going to be, since I don't know off the top of my head. And then I'll post it in the channel under that comment so everybody can see.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very clear answer.
Amanda, I see your hand. Floor is yours.
Okay, I want to ask, is this Google Sheet, we have to fill up this Google Sheet or just doing the air, what's that called? The Airtable is fine.
Got it. So here's why we recommend the Google Sheet. If I come over to GitHub, I'll show you what it looks like. So if I wanted to make a new allocator application, I hit get started, and you'll see that right over here, there is this Google Doc, and then right below it is Airtable. It's just like the limitations of tech at this point. If you go straight to Airtable and you start filling out the form, Airtable does not have a way to save your responses. And there are a lot of responses. And so what we found in testing is that some applicants got to like question 15, then they stopped, they might have left and they came back tomorrow. If their Airtable refreshed, they lost everything that they had done. Very frustrating, lots of anger. So what's nice about the Google Doc, it's only meant to be for you as like a fill-in tool. Like the flow would be you come to Google Docs, you see what all the questions are, you make your copy, and then you could take time with yourself or your organization and be like, how do we plan to do this? And then you could write your answers in like, this is my answer for question 11.
Okay.
And
But the
then you take
default
this.
one will be the Airtable, not the Google Drive, right?
You got it. No one will see the Google Drive. It's just meant to be there so that you can come to question 11 and then put your answer in here. Google Drive
Okay.
not submitted. It's just to make it so you don't lose your data in Airtable and screen.
I see. Because I also saw there's a scoring and also comments. Does that the feedback are going to give back? But who's going to fill up those scoring? Like we're gonna receive the feedback from that Google Sheet, right?
That's correct. You,
Okay.
not from the Google Sheets, just to make sure I'm saying the correct thing. Once you
Okay.
get your Airtable form, this
Mm.
comes into a broad swath, and we're going to have independent reviewers look at this and then take it and say, based off the answer that was given in 11, how well does that conform to like what a good answer was? So if we were looking for someone to tell us a holistic description of the data types and scales that makes logical sense, you'll get a 5. If there's no description or you write NA or unknown, you'll get a 1. So when you get your application back, it will say, hey, question 17, here was your answer. You received a 1. And then you know, okay, I need to provide more information. And that's where office hours get really helpful. It's like, I didn't know what to put for question 17. So I put NA. We can talk about it or help you. And then you can say, I can add a little bit more, then that will increase your score.
Okay, I see. My last question is when we will expect it to receive the feedback?
Yeah, that's a delay on our tech part. So essentially what we're doing is Airtable is a whole separate system from GitHub. And
Mm.
because GitHub in the past has actually kicked users off for using VPN, we've lost a lot of past applications. So using the Airtable was more of like an accounting so we could have a record of it. The tricky thing now is exporting everything from Airtable into GitHub in a format that's readable for a human. And so these integrations, they keep spitting this data out and it looks terrible. I think the manual step might just be for myself or someone to hand jam those in. You'll probably see all of the Airtable data that was completed for everybody added to each one of the comments, probably the first week in January when we're back. That way you can see others and get feedback. And the goal of this is if you're making an application and you see someone who already did and their application has high scores, it's looking great, you can model and use it as an example. And that's really the goal of it. And that should be coming soon.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much.
Yeah, great question again. Thanks, Amanda. So, Kenneth, I see you're on the call. You're one of the two that I have in Singapore. Kenneth, what I'm going to do is I'm going to message both of you and try to find a time. What I don't want to do is get you up really early or force you to get up in the middle of the night. So I'm sure if we just start a small DM, we could find a time for the three of us that you well.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Kevin. This call is informative. So, so 9th of January. So do I have to go to the Airtable again? I don't have to.
Kenneth, since you've already filled that out, I have your question, I have your topic, and I have your time zone. There was one other person who was in the same general time zone, so I'll see if I can get you guys together. Otherwise, I'll just message you, and it looked like you were free on the 19th, so we'll find a time that's conducive where I can sit down with you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, I'll make it one last call and see if there's anything anybody else had. Otherwise, I'll thank you for your time on this relatively short, just general catch-up update for things going on.
I think no questions. Merry Christmas.
Love it, Eric. All right. Eric, Amanda, Casey, Julian, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time. You guys have a wonderful day. Cheers, everyone.
Merry
Cheers.
Christmas.
Bye-bye.
New Year.
Friendly hellos. Welcome to the second Notary Governance call of 2019. This will be the last call of the year. On the agenda, same as this morning's first call, start out high level, give you an update on the DataCap refresh, why that's been delayed a few days, check in on that, let you know when it's coming. The second, update you on any new bugs that have come in, make sure that you're tracking how to fill those out. Thanks for taking that form time. And third, taking a look at the AC bot. It's been live for 2 weeks. What's going to change? And as that threshold tightens, making sure you're aware of all those things. As far as allocators, most of this is going to be review, just meant to be any questions that come up, reintroducing you to the rubric, office hours, timelines, FAQ, and the morning call ended with lots of extra time. So this one should as well, pending any questions you may have.
好，那我们今天呢，主要呢，我们的会议的议程主要有3大部分，在我们的计划的部分呢，主要是要看看我们的这个 DataCap 的这个整个的目前的一个情况。那另外在 bug 的 status 的部分也做一个简单的一个报告。那AC bug 的一个部分，我们也在做一个整个一个回顾看看上一次讨论的一些东西呢在这一次我们有一些什么样的进展。第二部分我们会讨论到 Allocator 分配器的部分，那对于这个大家的一些申请的情况，还有时间点，另外加上我们的 Rubric 的部分也会做出一点讨论。另外在我们的时间上我们今天的第一个会议呢比较早就结束，所以跟大家讲一下，我们今天的时间上会比往常呢要稍微可能简短一点点。然后最后呢，我们有一个这个问题的一个部分，加上一个讨论。
No change to the governance team. If you need anything from any one of us, please reach out. If you're looking for a conduit, I'll be happy to step in and route you to the best POC.
在我们的治理团队来说呢，目前并没有任何的改变那如果你们有任何的问题麻烦你就跟我直接联络我可以回应你们所有的问题。
I'm going to post in chat the sign-in form for all of you that are live on the call tonight. Thanks for taking the time. That's right there in air chat. We'll be sunsetting this probably when we kick off with the allocators, but this is still a great way to show your length of time in the program, whether you're an existing notary, storage provider, interested community. This is a great way to say, I was there, I was taking part.
那这个页呢，就是要让大家能够看到这个地方就是一个等于是 sign in 的地方。那用这个 chat 里面这个 link 去做sign in，那让你了解到在这个整个流程里面这个你们的所有的一些基本资料那你有没有在这上面有没有活动都会在这个上面呢可以有记录下来。
If there's items you'd like to see on future agendas, I'll post an issue in GitHub each week. Feel free to fill that out. And then for future calls, just to remind you, this is the last call taking place in December of 2023. We'll be pushing out polls and we'll talk about that, but this is the last call for 2023.
在2023年呢，今天是我们最后一次电话会议那我基本上每一个礼拜呢都会在 GitHub 里面呢把所有的一些问题把它放进去让大家能够一目了然知道我们现在这个计划的进行的一些状况跟处理的问题的一个情形。
Looking for feedback. We'll be pushing out a poll in early January, and your feedback is wanted. It will go along the lines of, how would you like to see this call structured in 2023? Is it valuable to have it twice a month? Is it valuable to have it twice a day? Is it valuable to have set topics that come up? Can we do this in different ways? So since this last call of 2023, great opportunity to look at this and get your feedback on how to make this call as relevant for everyone's time as possible.
那因为我们这一次呢，是我们这个2023年的最后一次的会议，那所以我们可以在今年年底呢来做一个总结。所以我们即将推出一个意调这意见调查表。那这个意见调查表呢，我们要了解一下是不是每隔2个礼拜来做一次的会议呢？是有益的，或者是说每一天2次这个情况是不是能够接受？那我们的目的就是希望能够说做最好的安排来适应你最好的这个时间的部分，然后有利于你的工作的这个情况所以麻烦在这个部分呢，大家踊跃的对我们的意调呢来做一个很好的回应，谢谢。
So last item of governance business, the team will be out on a collective holiday in the stateside. There'll be very much delayed comms December 24th through January 2nd. Only really triaging outages or major bugs that should come up. Otherwise, you'll see a great delay in communications from any member of the governance team taking place from the 24th through the 2nd.
那跟大家报告一下呢，因为马上到达的就是我们在欧美这边呢，这个一个比较大的一个庆祝的一个活动。那在这个部分里面呢，大家就会等于是说放假，所以呢，从24号开始到1月2号，我们的一些回应上可能会有一些比较大的一些这个不一定那么快。那除了一些紧急的事件之外一般来讲大概就是回应都会很慢，所以大家心里先有个底。那没有庆祝这些节日人可能比较不能够理解，那所以大家先跟大家说一声，我们在欧美这边呢这个节日的庆祝是很重要，所以大家很多人都会等于是说放假所以请大家原谅，谢谢。
All right, DataCap. So if you take a look in the registry right now, you'll see that the LDN 3.1 is still sitting around 155 terabytes. It's been there for a few days. One of the reasons why this can't be refilled or it was just cleared was if you saw in the news, the Ledger physical devices were subject to a malware attack. And if those ledgers were connected last week, there was no known proxy for how wide that malware has spread. So in an abundance of caution, it was advised that no ledgers were plugged in on the side of the root key holders or anyone in the foundation, PL, any teams involved until that was rectified. We just got the all clear this Monday, and so that word has been disseminated to all parties involved. And so we should see that data cap resume probably early tomorrow morning, if not late tonight.
所以在我们这个表格上可以看到，在 LDN 3.1 的部分呢，还是有一些处理的一些时间表的一个 delay 只稍微慢了一下。原因是因为呢，我们遇到的一些每1小时里面呢，都有一些病毒的一些侵入那看不出一些其他的一些问题。那我们也有点担心这个病毒的散播呢，不晓得是一个什么样的程度，所以我们花了一点时间来做一个解决。所以直到这些东西解决之前，我们不会说特别能够把这问题马上把它处理掉。那现在处理好了以后呢现在可以跟大家讲说，大概是明天左右呢大概就可以把这个部分呢修正好，让大家能够开始能够知道说这个是已经恢复正常了。
I'll cover these next two slides together. The first is the bug report. So back in October, lots of problems with the way that the front-end verifier was uploaded. That has since been corrected. We were seeing applications not move forward when the bot triggered. This should be squared away. I've been watching the bug reports. Nothing new has come through. If you are still having any kind of technical issues, problems, please let me know or file a report here in the bug. It's linked in the slide deck and will help you. The second part of this two-part update is the AC bot. It went live 2 weeks ago. You should start to see it commenting in applications now. And what's going to happen is over time, the thresholds over the next 2 weeks will come up to full strength. So over the last 2 weeks, if you look at a metric like the CID checker score, only retrievals needed to be compliant within 25%. As we move through December, that will update to 50, 75, and eventually reaching its plateau at 95. So if you get a ping from the AC bot, it will leave very specific instructions on what additional information is needed in that application. Fill that out, and then that will appease the AC bot. But the big takeaway is that the AC bot will be tightening those restrictions on more application as time goes on.
那我把这下面的2页的一个报告呢，把它连在一起先讲完哈。第一个部分在我们这个有一些这个问题的部分哈，这bug 的部分哈，那有些问题呢之前有发生的问题，在过去这段时间呢，并没有特别大的问题，那所有产生的问题呢，目前都已经解决了。那当然，如果你们有遇到一些技术性的一些问题的话还是一样麻烦赶快回报。另外第二个部分在 AC bot 的部分呢，有我们这2个礼拜以来呢把这个报告过的一些情况呢，就是有做一些修正，然后呢我们有一些把一些阀值呢它做一些设定那这些阀值的一些设定呢，待会儿在我们往下呢，现在就会变成说你会看到这个本身呢它会从25%改变到50%到75%最后呢会到95%所以如果有一些收到一些Airbot AC bot 的一个问卷或是一个等于是讯息过来的话呢，需要你回应一些资讯，麻烦你仔细填好把它寄回来这样就可以，这样我们就可以收到你的一些资讯了。谢谢。
Allocators. Most of this content is refresher, designed to answer any questions. I'm going to go through it quick. If this is your first time, please reach out or watch some of the old content. For submitting, process has changed. When you come into the GitHub, fill out the form, and then you'll complete your Airtable. Once you submit that Airtable will be scored and given back.
那在这个部分，我们基本上只是在这个分配器的部分，我们只是要做一点回顾那主要是在我们的申请的部分大家把这个表格填好之后，那到时候呢收到你的申请表，我们就会把它做一个评分，然后寄回来给你。
So the question comes down to, what does that scoring look like? Last week in the Phil Plus channel, Galen posted the rubric. That rubric is the same rubric updated for the questions along with V5 allocators, but it's the same structure that was used in election 4 and election 3. The goal of the rubric is that as an applicant, you can look and see what is a high bar and a low bar for each field asked in the application. So for example, if on the application it asks for what type of data would be applicable for your pathway, and your application says NA, there's no additional context, there's no additional details, it's going to get a 1. But if there's a lot of context, it's very clear what will happen, then it will get a higher score. So you can see all of those different options as well as how that will relate. That is the purpose of having a rubric when you look at your application.
那我们在这个 rubric 部分呢，就是我们在每个问题上大家弄上去这个把它回应之后呢这个应用的程式呢会把这个基本上里面什么样的一个资料来做一个回应。所以如果你看到有一个 MA， 那它的这个的数字就会得1那如果是有其他的部分，那它有代表不同的意思。那所以在这个表格上，大家可以看得到说 rubric 呢这个所有的资料就是用这种方式来做一个呈现那大家如果在收到这些资料的时候，那就可以了解说这个的过程是怎么样的一个运用所以大家做一些等要能够仔细的看一下，就会有一点深入的了解。那有任何的不同就像往常一样就是让我们知道
I'll pause here and see if anybody has any questions specific to the rubric, since this is a new content that we're bringing up. So any questions about rubric right now, the floor is yours.
那我们在这里先暂停一下，来听听看，因为在 rubric 这个部分呢，是一个新的一个话题看看大家有没有什么特别的问题要提出来。
All right, in chat, first question I see is, could you share the rubric here? Yes, I will go back to that public channel and grab that and drop that in Slack in just a moment. Second
好，
question is, sorry, go ahead.
刚才我们在这个 chat 里面看到一个问题是，可不可以把这个 rubric 的这个看起来的样子呢，这个跟我们分享一下？那我现在待会去找一下，马上在我们的群组里面就分享给大家看。
All right, next question I see in chat comes from Doris. I want to know, after submitting the V5 application form, if you submit it today, when will you get the score? Will it be before Christmas? Great question. And then it looks like there's some more, so I'll handle this one and move down. As far as receiving the score, it won't be happening from one party. Essentially, what the score is meant to be is two parts. All of the questions in your application will be published in your application. So all the things you filled out in Airtable. This way, people can look at your bookkeeping and your diligence plan, provide input and comments, and then that score gets applied at the very end at January 20th. And what we'll do is we'll look at all the applications, the board will look at all this, the information parties will look at all this, and try to say, does this application meet the goals of the requirement? And then use the rubric to cross-reference between them. So the date you'll get your score, your actual score where someone looked at this, is much later, not before Christmas.
所以在这个有问的一个问题是，对于我们这些申请的资料呢，如果说今天填好之后呢，会不会在圣诞节之前能够完成？那基本上这个部分呢，我们会把你在 APP 就是你的申请表里面呢放进去的资讯把它先公布。这样公布完之后呢，就可以让大家可以看到的人也许有一些意见可以做一些回应。那最后呢，这些资料整理好之后，我们的这个管理层呢就会看看你这个资料以后，然后再依据这个资料，然后配合着 rubric 的一些参考资料来做一个分析，来做一个决定。那大概呢是在1月20号左右呢才会有一个分数出来。
And the second part of the question is, how will you receive updates to your application? I pulled up one from the 4th round just so you could see. It'll be the same thing. Essentially, after you fill out all of the information, it will populate here in the GitHub. People can leave comments, ask questions, leave feedback, and then you'll receive your initial scoring by the governance team as a PDF embedded in your application. So it will not come through an email. It will come through in the applications. Two parts. One, email can become a swamp, easy to lose things, but two has to do with openness and transparency. The scores are not meant to be private. They're meant to be public based off the same criteria for everybody. So when you click into that, you'll see what the final score is and give you participation time.
那至于呢，我们这个分数的一些展现的部分呢，我们在这个有更新之后，那这个申请表的更新的资料会怎么样的一个看得见呢？这个是我们的问题。那基本上呢，我们会把这个做评分的一些资料呢，把它放在 GitHub 里面。那在 GitHub 里面呢，它会存在的方式是一个用 PDF 的方式让大家可以看得到。那我们不会寄 email 给大家，原因是因为呢，我们希望这个部分能够公开和透明。所以呢，让大家可以一起看到我们这个分数打起来是什么样子对每一个人的评分是什么样子，达到一个大家都很公平的一个标准。
And then as far as having additional information that you could put into yours, inside of the application, pulling this one up, once the comments are all posted, if there's any additional questions or issues, it will come inside of GitHub, not Slack, not email. And again, the reason, unless it's private or sensitive, is to make sure that all these conversations out in the open. So any continual information that you provide, put in your GitHub application.
所以有问题问到说，那如果有其他多余的资料需要填进去，在这个申请表里面呢，做回应的时候会填在哪里呢？那基本上我们也会把这些资料呢放在这个像这个样子这个表格在这里给大家看一下，然后呢大家可以填进去这个会出现在这个地方。我们不会用 Slack， 我们也不会用这个 email 的方式做，因为我们放在这个地方 这样大家就可以看得到，所以这样可以达到更加透明的一个目的。
Good questions. Thank you for both of those.
谢谢这几个问题都问得非常好。
Anything comes up, feel free to stick a hand or ask. Not much new. So far, as of this morning, we had 13 applications. Just looking in GitHub right now on this call, I think we're up to around 14 or 15. So again, just from like a timeline perspective, that's why this takes a long time to culminate, disseminate, and process out. So I don't expect anything before the Christmas break that's taking place this Friday. So we still see a lot of applications come through now between January 20th.
那我在目前的申请的部分到截至今天为止呢，我们之前有看到13个，那我所看的最近的呢，大概是14到15个啊。那我们预期呢，在1月20号之前呢，应该会有比较多的一些申请的资料会再送进来啊，所以这是给大家目前在这个申请的部分呢，做一个简单的一个回应。
Stressing this, we'll put it in chat, just making sure everyone's tracking the holiday that the governance team will be out, which leaves 2 weeks. So if you are working and you're not in the state celebrating the Christmas holidays that take place, the last deadline to get the allocator application is June 20th. If you submit it early, you have the benefit of receiving feedback from the community, any questions. If you submit it on the last day, you will not receive that kind of feedback. You will not receive any kind of review. So whatever the application is, it's finalized. So it's highly encouraged that you get your application in early and give it time for that process.
那跟大家要稍微再次说明一下，在这个截止日期之前收到的东西呢，我们的目的就是希望给你一些比较好的一些这个意见让你能够在这个申请表上能够把资料填得完整，然后能够得到比较好的分数。那如果你在这个申请的时间到达的时候才把这个申请表寄进来，那这样的话我们可能就没有办法给你任何的一些意见，所以收到什么就是照你原来寄进来的东西来做一个审核，那这样的话不一定是对你有利的所以大家越早申请越好。
We're trying to schedule office hours, and the purpose of office hours is if you have a specific question that you'd like to review, ask, or check before, during this application process. It's difficult to schedule given the international times. I pushed out an Airtable form to sign up. I'll do another one for the January dates. I met with a few. If you're still looking for specific questions, the best place is just to ping me. I'm going to pre-apologize that lots and lots of questions are coming through. So there's a little bit of delay on when I get back to you. So thanks for your patience. We'll have more of these office hours if you'd like to chat or review anything in more detail.
那我们当然有设好一些办公室的一些时间来给大家做一些比较有效的一些回应。但是呢，基于我们在这个国际的一些时差的问题呢，有些时候呢要安排这些时间并不是那么的容易。但是我们会尽量的是在1月份，我们还是会尽量设定一些时间，让大家有机会来这个预定一个时间大家可以来做一些问题的讨论。那当然最理想的就是你就寄一个讯息过来 ping 一下让我这个想一下那个资讯过来一下，让我直接看。虽然这样的方式不会是及时的，但是呢稍微有点这个延迟，可是也是一样可以很有效的回应你。所以大家麻烦采取这2种及时的方式来做一个会议也可以。那不及时的话，就麻烦用寄讯息的方式寄过来，这样我们也可以保持一个良好的沟通。
So with that, that is the summary of the new information. The ledger will be updated. The AC bot is running and will get tighter. No new bugs. Overview of the rubric. The floor is yours if there's anything else you'd like to discuss or bring up or chat as a community.
那基本上我们能够今天讨论过的这个 Ledger 的一个这个等于是状况还有 AC 的部分那另外就是说这个 Rubric 的应用那所以谈过这些资料了那 目前看起来就是我们能够讨论的话题啊，就是先到这里为止。那如果大家还有什么其他的问题，这个时候我们可以踊跃的提出来。